The Hostess excerpt. An excerpt from a longer fiction piece inspired by the strange intimacy of temporary living spaces. Amelia was excited, yet terrified. She had just booked a 3-month accommodation on a beautiful island in the Atlantic Ocean. She was excited because she'd been wanting to visit the region for a couple of years, but she was terrified because of the way she booked it. Since it was high season, all the typical accommodations like Airbnb, VRBO, and hotels were expensive. Consequently, she opted for a homestay with a woman in her 60s named Angie. Given the workflow of the website, she was only able to look at pictures and message Angie before paying a deposit to secure her spot. The logistics terrified her because, for any long-term accommodation, she typically liked vetting both her host and the accommodation through a video call, which wasn't an option this time. This made her very nervous, but it was the only affordable option she could find. She figured that if things went sideways, she had an emergency fund to get her out. After the nervousness settled, the excitement rushed back with warmth throughout her chest. It was around 10 p.m. when she arrived at the accommodation. From the outside, the area looked very peaceful and the architecture of the buildings looked pleasant. She knew that during the day it would look exquisite. She made her way up to the 3rd floor with her suitcases after texting the hostess that she had arrived. As she stepped onto the 3rd floor, the door in front of her opened and a woman in her 60s stepped out. Angie looked unkempt and gave Amelia an eerie look. She had been struggling with her suitcase as the wheels weren't working properly, and somehow this image seemed odd to Angie. Part of her wanted to turn back and go into the elevator, but she smiled shyly, greeted her, and stepped into the apartment. Angie led her through the apartment to her room. At first glance, the apartment looked like it hadn't been cleaned in many months, and there was clutter and moving boxes everywhere. There was a portable gas camping stove on top of the actual stove, which was odd and full of food residue. The washroom looked questionable. This made her nervous as someone with a dust allergy. When she got to her room, she wasn't sure what to expect, but to her surprise, her room was clean. Angie explained that she had just come down with a cold, so she hadn't gotten a chance to clean. But the apartment looked like it hadn't been cleaned in months. "Was your flight okay coming in?" "Yes, it was okay. The taxi was very expensive, though." Yes. The taxis run a surcharge at night from the airport." "Oh, wow. Didn't know that was a thing." "Yeah. By the way, just be sure to keep your door closed. I let my cat roam loosely around the apartment, so if you don't want her in your room, just make sure to close your door." "Thanks for the heads up. What's your cat's name?" "Her name is Marbles. Anyways, I'm sure you are very tired. I left the Wi-Fi information on your desk. I'll let you get settled. Good night." "Good night." She closed her door and started to unpack only the essentials that she needed for the night. The hostess, although odd, seemed okay. But the apartment was a mess, and that was going to be an issue. She went to sit in her computer chair and noticed the amount of dirt coming out of the wheels. The chair wheels looked like they hadn't been cleaned in more than 5 years. Every time she rolled the chair, dirt came out. She cleaned up the mess and exhaled, knowing she was going to have to figure that out tomorrow. But for now, she just needed to rest. She figured that maybe she could just clean the apartment, and everything else would be okay. Amelia slept surprisingly well for the first night. She opened the curtains of her room, which revealed a beautiful resort next door. Many retirees sprawled out on beach chairs along the multiple pools. The road was lined with palm trees, and the outside was breathtaking. As she entered the kitchen, the hostess stood making breakfast on the camping gas stove. Amelia's eyes remained fixated on the camping stove. She wasn't a fan of fire. Angie looked at her and put the two together. "I use a gas stove because it's cheaper and faster than using the regular stove. So how does it work? Like this. Angie turned on the gas of the unoccupied plate, took a lighter, and lit it. A large blue flare erupted upward. Amelia's face dropped and shivers ran down her body. "That does not look safe," she exclaimed. "It's safe, don't worry," Angie said, trying to reassure her. Then she took her hand and put it over the blue flame like it was nothing. Amelia's eyes widened. "So, did you sleep well?" "Yes, I did." "Great. Since you don't have any food, feel free to have some of mine in the fridge." "Thank you. I really appreciate that." "Of course, I'd like to take you on a tour of the town since it's your first time here." "That would be great, thank you." "Great. Let me know when you're ready to go." "Will do." 30 minutes later, they were off. As they stepped outside, she couldn't believe her eyes. Behind her were lush green mountains, and in front of her, down the road, was the water. They were about a 10-minute walk away from one of the most beautiful beaches on the entire island. The buildings, as she already suspected, were even more beautiful during the day. "This is paradise." "It really is. That's why I moved here." "Shall we go?" "Yes." They started making their way down the hill toward the beach. The hostess explained that she was originally from another, larger island up north. She had been living on this island for about 5 years, and she lived in the apartment with her sister, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. She explained that for work, she still traveled a lot for international projects. So there would be times where she would need to leave and wouldn't be able to take marbles with her. The beach was beautiful. It had black sand due to the volcanoes. Not too far off, they entered the town, which was peaceful and exquisite with its colorful buildings. She felt like she was in South America. Once the tour finished, they headed nearby to grab groceries before deciding how to get back to the apartment. The supermarket was about a 30-minute walk from the apartment, all uphill, and with bags of groceries, the hostess said there were 2 options: bus or taxi. The hostess explained that the taxi wouldn't be expensive given that it was a 5-minute ride back. They weren't close to a bus stop. She was exhausted after walking for more than an hour, and with the multiple grocery bags, she opted for the taxi. When they arrived, the hostess looked at her to pay, and she did. They both got out of the car and went upstairs. She thought it was odd that the hostess didn't offer to at least split the fare. After all, she took her on a tour in a town she had never been to, knowing she needed food and had limited transport options given the groceries, but she brushed it away. When they got back to the apartment, the hostess decided to get some work done remotely on the dining table, while Amelia decided to cook and clean some of the shared spaces. With her food baking in the oven, she decided to start in the washroom. She was in and out looking for cleaning supplies. She put her earphones on, closed the washroom door, and got into a groove, not making much noise. 10 minutes in, she heard a loud, "Hey!" over her noise-canceling earphones. She stopped abruptly and came out of the washroom concerned. She went over to the hostess, who wore a look of anger, almost as if she had been deeply offended. In a loud voice, she continued, "You know I am trying to get work done, and you keep opening and closing the door, and I can't focus." She was taken aback because at this point the hostess was yelling. She stepped back. "I am sorry, I'm just cleaning the washroom." "Well, stop opening and closing the door. That's why I tape the handles, because they make so much noise when people open and close doors." "Okay, but I wasn't being loud." "Yes, you were." "Okay. I just appreciate it if you could be more considerate since I'm clearly working over here." She looked at her confused. It was a shared space in a homestay. If she needed absolute silence for work, the dining room was the worst place to do it. but the look on the hostess's face told her to comply. She had this eerie feeling that something wasn't right. "Okay," she responded. "Thank you," the hostess said with relief and smiled. "Oh, by the way, I have a few more rules. Please don't flush the toilet at night because it wakes me up." "Wait, what?" "Yes, it wakes me up. That's also why I added a mini lock to the washroom. It's quieter than the lock handles." "What if I needed to do a number two, or if I'm on my period?" "You can flush if it's number two or if you're on your period. Oh, I almost forgot. We all chip in for water since we can't drink the tap water, and there will be another woman joining us next week." "Okay." "Great." The hostess smiled and calmly went back to work. She went back to the washroom to quietly finish cleaning. It felt like she was moving items so quietly as not to wake a sleeping baby. When she finished, she decided to get out of the apartment as she was feeling overwhelmed. She had just been yelled at for cleaning a washroom that should have already been cleaned, all because of an inconsiderate noise complaint. She had also been told she wasn't allowed to flush the toilet at night, and now had to pay extra for water. She also couldn't stop thinking about the look in that woman's eyes. It was off, very off. She needed to start looking into other accommodation options before the next month rolled over.